Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Govs on the Go Alumni Edition, a podcast featuring alumni from the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay State University. My name is Dr. Buzz Hoon. I'm the Dean of the College. I'm also the host of the podcast. Today, I'm talking with Arthur Orr, who received a master's degree in history in 2023. Arthur, thank you for being on the podcast. So great to have you today.
Good to be with you, and appreciate the opportunity.
So let's start with a life update. Tell everybody what you're currently doing in life and where you are.
Well, I am part of the team that runs a very large regional pest control company. We have sites in Tennessee, locations, but scattered around 6 states in the Southeast, about 2,000 employees, 100-year history. So that keeps me busy in the day, but I also am an elected official, if you will, in our Alabama State Senate and have been for almost 20 years now, and chair the Appropriations Committee here in Alabama.
So even though that's supposed to be a part-time job, I'm sure that full-time responsibility, everybody realizes around there that you're the state senator. So that's a full-time responsibility.
That's correct. It's supposed to be part-time, but if you're going to do your job fully, it certainly is full-time. So that keeps me quite busy. And of course, family, church responsibilities, things like that, also keep me moving.
Absolutely. Now, I think in some of the notes I found, you are, was it a sixth-generation Alabamian? Is that
That's
right?
correct. Yep, on my father's side. Now, my
Oh,
mother is a Memphis girl, so have
okay.
some Tennessee connections. A lot of family members went to Vanderbilt up the road for college. I got in but declined and went elsewhere. But yeah, so a lot of Tennessee connections. And where I'm from in Alabama is North Alabama, so right across this Tennessee line off of I-65, of course, which goes through the middle of Tennessee, and so a lot of connections to Tennessee.
And I think we were talking before we started, and you're from a small town, Danville. How do you think that growing up in a small town impacted sort of your development?
Well, Danville is a four-way stop, and so it's not much to it. It's unincorporated. It does have a post office and a high school, but not much there. But that's where the family on my father's side has been for quite some time. When they said, for a historian, you'd appreciate this, but when they started giving away free land after in the early 1800s, my crowd decided they liked some of that free land, and so came westward from Georgia to Alabama and put down roots and have been here ever since.
So I recognize that you have always been a doer, and so what do you credit your work ethic? How do you develop sort of that attitude? Is it passed through your family, or do you always feel like a self-motivated sort of person anyway?
Well, for me, I believe God puts us here for a reason, and it's up to us to be busy about doing good things and it could be running a business, teaching in school. There are a myriad of different vocations, impactful life. And for me, it's just we're not here to sit back and recline and enjoy a life of leisure, but we need to be pushing forward, doing what we can to make our little area of the world much better than it already is.
I noticed that you also, and before high school, you had a job. You had a responsibility to do some work. And I think that says a lot about a young person when they are asked to do also not just the education part, but also put in some time and have that work ethic.
Yeah, so I didn't appreciate it at the time. I think I was probably a recalcitrant teenager with a lot of attitude. I was busy in high school athletics, but my father came home one morning and said, "Well, I've got a job for you." And what's that? Well, every morning you're going to get to drive into town, and that'd be about a 20-mile drive, load sandbags on a train they use sand to give friction on the steel wheels and the steel tracks, something I didn't know at the time, and load these 50-pound bags into a large hopper from which the sand is dropped in the engines. And so I did that my senior year. Didn't enjoy it. It's 20 degrees outside. It can get cold here in North Alabama, but good discipline and hard work never hurt anyone, and something that I certainly hope I passed on to my children.
And so after high school, you attended Wake Forest University, which is going to be, stay a very important part of your life. And you also afterwards went to University of Alabama, got your law degree. So during that period of time, I also saw a record of leadership. I also saw a record of honor recognition. Why were those things important to you while you're getting your education?
Well, to confess, Buzz, I probably did not take full benefit of my education at the time. And I would chalk that up to perhaps immaturity or just not wanting to learn for learning's sake. At the time, it was learning to pass the test and then do a data dump and move on to the next objective, and not did not have an appreciation for learning. And that's something that I am so grateful for Austin Peay being there once I came to my senses as very much an adult now, that Austin Peay was there to offer the ability to go back to school and do something in the world of history and challenge myself, and had very good professors, and a very good overall positive experience there at Austin Peay. But back in college, again, it was just let's let's get out of this place as best we can,
Right.
and just learn for the test and move on. And so I didn't use my educational opportunities as I should have, but here we are, and I guess I landed on my feet nonetheless.
I would say so. You are quoted as saying, "My faith mandates action to address the needs of others." So after graduation, you joined the Peace Corps and were assigned to Nepal. Was that both exciting and also a little bit nerve-wracking for you to take on such a big task?
Yeah. So while I was in college, I had the opportunity to go work with a mission organization one summer in Haiti, and saw the conditions of the developing world and what life was like down in on the island there in Hispaniola or Haiti, and really believed that after law school I need to finish my education. Wanted to go do what I could to help the poor in need. And the Peace Corps seemed like the best vehicle. I didn't want to make a lifetime career of it, but that's in the wheelhouse of the U.S. Peace Corps. And so applied. It's a very lengthy, drawn out, and not a lot, not trying to boast, but not a lot of people make it through
Mm.
the application process. I think a lot of people, think, oh, I want to go help the do something, but then they maybe fall out or whatever, or get disinterested. But the computer sent me to Nepal, and way up in a Himalayan village in the mountains, where I would travel in the eastern side of the country, training teachers how to teach. And as an academic yourself, they were so removed, no roads, no telephone, no nothing, and they would learn through rote memorization. And I'm talking about elementary school, where basically the way they taught and their pedagogy was just memorizing the small little paperback textbook that they had, because that's how the teachers themselves were taught. And just going back through time, with the beginning of textbooks being offered there in the 50s up in the mountains, they just memorized, and you memorize the textbook, then you pass the test. But it was like computers. If you're only as good as what you memorized. And so if you asked them something related to it, they really couldn't answer. No fuzzy logic, if you will, or something. There was no ability to reason and rationalize, etc. They would just memorize the textbooks, and that meant they had mastery of the subject area. Perhaps they did in some ways, but not in others as far as application.
Is that when you started to develop sort of your own ability to problem solve? Because you saw this need here, and uh, how do you help people in that kind of situation?
Well, the best thing I knew to do was to working with the teachers. My job was to train teachers how to teach, was to get away from the rote memorization, and that was certainly hard to break as you come in as a young person in their 20s, and you have these teachers that they're used to calling out the words, and then the students would just repeat in unison, and they just go to the next sentence and the next sentence, chanting back and forth between teacher and students. And as you would hear the children study, they would just be memorizing to themselves, talking out loudly as they would read their textbooks, just again ingesting it word for word, because that's how they would be tested on the material. But while I was there, was able to see the need of young women and young children, girls that many times were 12, 13, and they'd get married off in arranged marriages, and started a scholarship fund. And so I go back to Nepal occasionally, continue to fund the scholarship fund to help these children get out of the mountains and get to I'm going to call it a university college, but everything's relative there. But get to another environment, and to have the capability to even perhaps get into a field or an avocation where they can support themselves without having to rely on a marriage situation. Ran into one actually in London a couple years ago who had become a nurse, and then moved to the UK to have a family there. And so just what a difference people
Wow.
can make in the lives of others if you're reaching out and trying to touch those lives as you're able to do.
Yeah, what a gift. So you come back to the U.S. after your time in the Peace Corps, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, I'm sure. Joined a law firm in Decatur, and but the entire time, again, I see sort of this evidence of faith because you're involved in lots of nonprofit organizations. Again, that must have been a reoccurring. It seems like that's a reoccurring theme that you're always motivated by your faith.
Well, yes, and I'd say that in humility. People without faith certainly do good things, good
Yeah.
works, and um, uh, no quarrel there. But for me, I just, like I said earlier, just think we need to be busy about the kingdom and to work to improve the lives of others, and be an example. And I do enjoy it, because I don't like seeing situations where there could be positive change, or where we need to improve things. And having my Senate hat on, am able to help influence decisions in Montgomery, particularly in public education. And we've made some strides here, and we needed to make some strides and continue to need to make improvements. But everyone's given certain gifts. Everyone can do as they choose to do, and help others in whatever way. And there are certainly a lot of unsung heroes around our world trying to do that on a daily basis.
Well, again, I think what's really neat about your career path is that you spend time continuing to help others because you went to Habitat for Humanity International and served there as well. So what were your memories sort of from that experience? Because again, you're in engaging, I think, in Asia and that
Right.
part of the world.
So, um, after I'd come back and I was practicing law, the light bulb goes off and says, "Do is this really what you need to be doing?" And that being butting heads with other lawyers squabbling over money for the rest of your life. So, and still single at the time, and felt like, well, shoot, I don't have any debt. I don't have children or a family that I need to, it's going to uproot. And so felt like it with that situation, I was able to pick up and move. And at the time, I was working volunteering with the local Habitat affiliate, so familiar with the organization, and contacted them, the Asia Pacific people in America at the time, Americus, Georgia. They've since moved to Atlanta, and said, I'm two hands and a brain with a law degree, not no home building skills, and so he readily hired me and sent me to Asia, back to Asia, which is where I had my experience, to start the program in Bangladesh. They didn't have a program at the time in that country, and a lot of challenges there, a lot of need in Bangladesh, as you would imagine. But after a lot of tenacity and trying and working with the government people, we got registered and started building homes, and they've built thousands and thousands of homes now. Um, but it's a challenging environment. In that period, I met my future wife and took her back to Bangladesh. So that was a bit of an adjustment for her. But had a good experience with Habitat, very good, well-run organization, and came back in the early 2000s to start a family.
And when you come back, you're involved and you started several successful businesses. You get involved, as you said, into the current business, and at some point in time, you decided to get involved in politics. What led you to that decision?
I would have to go back to a spiritual decision again, just after prayer. Where do you want to use me,
Mm.
Lord? And at the time, it was the state was controlled, I would say, by the good old boy network. And so Rand had the most expensive campaign, I believe it was, that particular year for the legislature. A lot of dirty radio ads and mailers and TV ads and all the things that happen in campaigns, and got to where I didn't want to go to the mailbox, and I didn't want to watch TV, and I didn't want to listen to the radio because it was quite ugly. But anyway, ended up winning by a large margin and went to Montgomery, and as a freshman senator. At the time, I'm a Republican in the Republican Party. The Republicans were in the minority party, and 4 years later, the Republicans became the majority party. And at that time, I became the appropriations chair, and have been so 15 years now. And it's been good in years. Those were tough years. If you remember the Great Recession, we were scrounging very badly in 2010, but things are much better here in Alabama in the fiscal world.
And now that kind of leads us now to this pivotal point for us is your decision to come to Austin Peay and get this master's degree. Again, can you explain how you decided to, and we're very glad that you did. How did you come to
So
Austin
am I.
Peay?
At the time, was serving on a university board, and became friends with the president of the university, and we were talking about just academic career, and I made the offhand remark, I always wish I'd majored in history. I was an English literature major, and kind of a long story how I wound up there. And that's not a bad thing. But I have always had a unique interest in history, and he mentioned perhaps considering an online program. We both looked around the country and saw that there was one there at Austin Peay in Clarksville, and so applied and was admitted, thankfully, and began that journey. I knew it would be a very slow journey of taking one class a semester with the summers off, but just thought, well, if you don't begin the journey, you'll never reach your destination. And I'm so glad that Austin Peay took a chance on me, and I'm certainly pleased that to have the years that I did as a student at Austin Peay. Though I may have been the longest active graduate student in the history of the school, the graduate school, for what should have been a 1 year journey was a 5 year journey for me. But that's okay. Slow and steady wins the race.
That's right. I mean, after you talked about your time as an undergrad and going, just, trying to do what you can to get your time done as quickly as possible. Although I probably did, now I think about, hurt our progression rate in terms of why isn't this person along the lines of graduation yet? But that's okay. We'll go with that. What kind of professors? What did you like to study? What kind of professor was inspirational to you during the program?
Well, there's several. Yeah, I don't want to name names too much and leave people out, but I would, like to say how much the chairman, Dr. Tanner, he recent chairman, I would say, in the last couple of years, but Dr. Kevin Tanner was certainly helpful. But they were all. There's not one that was difficult to get in touch with, unreasonable about anything. Not that I was one of those students who are trying for their professor. I try to go along to get along, but I guess what really impressed me was the accessibility and the interest of the professors in someone who was an online student, such as myself, not there on campus, not sitting in the classrooms, not raising my hand or asking, you know, probing questions or anything like that. Now you can do some of that online, but they were very gracious with their time and with their explanations. They would go extra mile in the dialogue and the student and the class dialogues, and explaining the background or the issues, or referring you to only other works in the field that might be helpful or enlightening on a particular topic. I just found a very high quality, dedicated group of professors there in the history department.
Oh, that's good to hear, and I know they felt the same about you as a student. And speaking of student, our last question is always sort of one that is like, and since you're still well connected with your former university, Wake Forest, what kind of recommendations do you have to young people if they're interested in getting a degree in higher education?
Well, I mentioned it earlier, but I'll just restate it. If you don't begin the journey, you'll never get there, and you have to cross the Rubicon or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
or burn the boats and realize that today is the day to start and begin that process. And again, I can't brag enough on Austin Peay as far as the reception or the ease, even the secretaries there in the departmental office. If I had a question or an issue or needed some, very responsive. You weren't just a number. And I guess I had a little bit of fear of that coming back to college as someone in their 50s. And all those fears were allayed pretty quickly, and they stayed allayed because it never really became an issue. And so I would just say to those who might be contemplating such a move, be it a graduate degree or undergraduate degree, the time is now to start, and what a great place and a quality education you can receive at Austin Peay, because they're there for their students as a regional university. They see their mission as really investing in the lives of their student and helping them along life's pathway to improve their academic career and certainly their lives.
Well, Senator Orr, I know that we are grateful to have you not only as an alum, but also have you on the podcast today talking about your career path. It's very inspirational, and I've enjoyed sharing that story with you today.
Thank you. It's an honor to be with you, and and I do appreciate the ability to talk with you, and and maybe someone who's watching this today will get some benefit out of it. So thank you.
You bet. And thanks to all of our listeners and viewers out there for continuing to check out the podcast. We hope that you will join us again next time as we profile some of the outstanding graduates we have here in the College of Arts and Letters at Austin Peay State University. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and God bless.